He hadn't meant to stay this long. The plan was simple. Drop off the old camera she'd lent him for his project, thank her, and go. But now, an hour later, he was still standing in her kitchen, his fingers tracing the chipped edge of a mug that wasn't his, while she leaned against the counter across from him, unhurried, almost amused. The air between them had that kind of stillness that made every sound sharper. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tap of her ring against her glass, the uneven rhythm of his breath. She wasn't doing anything, not really. Just standing there, one hip slightly turned, her hair falling loose over one shoulder, eyes too direct to meet for long. "Did you get the photos?" she asked. Her voice had that low, textured calm that made ordinary words sound deliberate. He nodded. "Yeah, they came out better than I expected." She smiled. Not a full one, but something that made his pulse move faster anyway. "You always say that, as if you don't trust yourself." He looked down, a small laugh caught in his throat. "Maybe I don't." For a while, neither of them spoke. He could smell the faint trace of her perfume, something warm, like amber and smoke, and it filled the silence too easily. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, her bracelets making a quiet, metallic sound. "You should," she said finally. "You have a good eye." He looked up then, and she was already watching him. That steady, unflinching look, the kind that made him forget what he was supposed to say next. He tried to look away first, but failed. When she turned to rinse her glass, he caught himself watching the curve of her shoulder, the way her sleeve slipped down a little. He hated himself for noticing, or maybe for not pretending harder that he didn't. "Do you want another coffee?" she asked over her shoulder. "No, I should." He never finished the sentence. Because she turned around, leaned against the sink, and tilted her head slightly, waiting. That half-smile again. The one that looked like she already knew the answer he wouldn't say. He forced a small breath. "I should probably go." Her eyes flicked down, just briefly, then back up. Probably. But she didn't move. Neither did he. The silence changed again. It wasn't comfortable anymore, but it wasn't awkward either. It was suspended. Like both of them were aware that if one of them said something wrong, or right, the moment would tilt too far to take back. He reached for his jacket on the chair, his movements a little too careful. "Thanks for..." And that's when it happened. Her hand, warm and steady, touched his arm. Just enough pressure to stop him mid-motion. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a question. It was simply there. He froze. The air thickened around the contact, soft skin against his sleeve, her thumb brushing once, almost absently. He should have stepped back. He didn't. When he finally looked up, her expression had changed. There was something uncertain behind her calm, a flicker that said she hadn't planned this either. "You forgot your memory card," she said quietly. He knew that wasn't true, but her hand stayed there a heartbeat too long before she let go. He opened his mouth, to say what, he didn't know, when the sound of a phone buzzing broke the air. She glanced toward the counter, her face turning slightly away, the glow of the screen lighting her cheek. "Excuse me," she murmured. He nodded, his throat dry, the warmth of her touch still on his skin. And as she reached for the phone, he knew. If he didn't leave right now, he wouldn't leave at all. The next time he saw her, it was supposed to be nothing, a polite return of the missing memory card she'd forgotten to give him. He told himself it was closure, a clean ending. But when she opened the door, barefoot and wearing the same soft sweater from that night, every bit of that logic dissolved. "Hey," she said, voice low, like the word had been waiting. He hesitated, holding up the tiny SD card, like proof that he had a reason to be there. "You left this in the drawer." Her smile was faint. "I knew it would find its way back." He almost smiled too, but the space between them carried that same quiet danger, the kind that made small talk feel dishonest. Inside, her living room looked lived in, half-read books on the table, a mug with lipstick at the rim, the faint scent of something floral. He stood awkwardly near the doorway while she poured water into a glass. "You still avoiding people?" she asked without turning. He frowned, caught off guard. "You make that sound like a habit." She shrugged, setting the glass down. "It's a habit when it starts feeling safe." He looked at her then, really looked. There was something in her eyes he hadn't noticed before. Not the confidence he first saw, but a trace of loneliness, the kind that settles slowly, like dust on a shelf you've stopped cleaning. He said softly, "You talk like someone who's done that for a while." Her laugh was quiet. "Maybe. It's easier to be alone than to pretend." He didn't know what to say to that. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. That same stillness he remembered, the one that made him both want to leave and stay at once. "You're what, 24?" she asked. 23. Right. Her tone softened, but not with judgment, more like caution. "You should be out with people your age. Not here, talking to me." He could have agreed. Should have. But instead, he asked, "Is that what you really want me to do?" Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp, almost defensive, then softer. "That's not the point." He stepped closer. Not much, just enough for the air to change again. "Maybe it is." A long silence. Only the faint ticking of the clock filled it. She didn't move away. He caught the faintest tremor in her breath. "You think you know what you're doing," she said. "I don't," he admitted. "That's the problem." Her lips curved, not in amusement, but something sadder. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I didn't mean to." "I know." The words hung between them, fragile and heavy. When he turned slightly toward the door, his hand brushed against hers on the counter. An accident, or maybe not. Neither of them pulled away. For a heartbeat, they stayed like that. Her fingers still, his trembling slightly, the pulse of something unspoken running between them. Then she exhaled, eyes fixed on their hands. "You should go," she whispered. But she didn't move her hand. And neither did he. Rain had started without warning, the kind that came fast and loud, hitting the windows like it meant to be heard. He stood inside her doorway again, half wet, holding the strap of his bag like a shield. She appeared from the kitchen, surprised. "You walked here?" He nodded, rainwater sliding down his hair. "Didn't think it would pour." She shook her head softly, grabbing a towel from the counter. "You'll catch a cold." When she reached for him, the towel brushing his face, her fingers grazing his temple, he froze. The air between them filled with something heavier than the storm outside. Her eyes lifted, close enough for him to see the faint flecks of gold in them. Neither spoke. The towel slipped from her hand, landing soundlessly on the floor. He should have stepped back. She should have turned away. Neither did. "Sit down," she murmured finally, voice not quite steady. He obeyed, the couch sinking beneath him as she walked around the room, restless, pretending to tidy what didn't need it. "I shouldn't have called you the other day," she said. "You didn't call me." "I thought about it," she corrected quietly. "That's bad enough." He watched her fingers brush through her hair, the nervous rhythm betraying her calm. "You think about it too much," he said. She stopped moving, her back half turned to him. "And you don't." His breath caught, too quick, too honest. Outside, thunder cracked. The sound filled the room, and when the light flickered, she turned toward him. Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to that small distance between them. She crossed the room before she decided to. Her hand rested on the back of the couch, inches from his shoulder. He felt her warmth before she touched him. "This isn't," she started, then trailed off. He tilted his head up, close enough to catch the scent of her perfume again, the one he'd memorized without meaning to. "You always stop mid-sentence," he said softly. "That's because the endings never sound right." The space between them disappeared for half a heartbeat. Her breath brushed his cheek, 1 second, maybe 2, before she blinked and straightened abruptly, her body going rigid. From outside the half-open window came the muffled sound of a voice, someone calling her name. A man's voice. Older. Familiar. Her expression shifted instantly. "That's," she whispered, panic flickering through her eyes. He stood too quickly. "Should I?" She shook her head, pressing a hand against his chest, urging him back down, whispering, "Don't move." They both froze, listening. Footsteps approached, stopped. The voice called again, farther now, fading under the rain. She stayed close, her hand still on him, her breath shallow. When it was finally quiet again, she exhaled, but didn't pull away. Her palm lingered against his chest, over his heartbeat, as if grounding herself in the silence that followed. Her gaze lifted slowly to meet him. The question hung between them, dangerous and unanswered. He whispered, "Who was that?" She hesitated, then gave the smallest, rueful smile. "Someone who shouldn't care anymore." The rain grew softer. Her hand still didn't move. The rain had stopped by the time he found the courage to return. He told himself it was to bring back the notebook she'd loaned him, the one filled with neat handwriting and faint coffee stains. But the truth sat heavier in his chest than the excuse he rehearsed. When she opened the door, her expression changed in an instant. Relief first, then something like regret. I didn't think you'd come back, she said quietly. He hesitated. You didn't tell me who that was. Her smile barely appeared. You noticed? Hard not to. She walked past him into the living room, her steps unhurried but her shoulders tense. It doesn't matter who he was, she said, but the way she poured herself a glass of wine betrayed the lie. Someone who doesn't get to ask questions anymore. He followed, standing near the doorway. But I did. She looked up sharply. And why do you think you get to? Because you looked scared, he said. And because I care. The words came out before he could take them back. Her glass stopped halfway to her lips. Silence again, thick, humming, charged. Then she laughed softly, but it wasn't amusing. You shouldn't. I tried not to. Her breath caught. The sound of it filled the room louder than the rain had. She set the glass down. You don't understand what this would look like. He took a small step closer. I don't care how it looks. You should. Her voice wavered now, her composure starting to crack. You're young. You don't see the mess waiting underneath it. He smiled faintly, not mocking, just sad. Then show me. Something inside her shifted, resistance softening into something heavier. Her eyes searched his face, and for the first time, she looked uncertain, almost afraid. Don't do this, she whispered. I already am. He reached for the notebook on the table, pretending to hand it over, but his fingers brushed hers, that single, accidental contact that sent a jolt through both of them. Her hand didn't move. Her hair slipped forward, brushing his knuckles. She didn't pull back. Every time you walk in here, she said softly, I forget the reasons I built to keep people out. He swallowed hard. Maybe they weren't the reason. Maybe they were walls. She looked up, close now, too close, her voice dropping to a whisper. And what happens if you climb over them? He took a slow breath. Maybe I will stay. Her lips parted slightly. A breath, a thought, 1,000 things unsaid. Then, the sharp trill of her phone again. She flinched, the sound slicing through the tension like glass. Neither of them moved to answer. The ringing stopped after a few seconds, leaving a silence that pulsed with everything they hadn't said. Her eyes met his again. You should go, she murmured, the words trembling this time. He didn't move. Her voice dropped even lower. Please. Still, he stood there, inches away, his hand still on the table beside hers, both of them caught between what was about to happen and what couldn't. He didn't go, even after she asked him to, even after her voice broke a little on the word please. He stood there, rain drying on his shoulders, his pulse echoing the same rhythm as the clock on the wall. She stayed by the table, pretending to fix the sleeve of her sweater, but her hands trembled slightly, small, involuntary movements she couldn't disguise. When she finally looked up, her face was calm again. Too calm. You shouldn't have come tonight, she said. I had to. For the notebook? For you. Her mouth parted, but no sound came. Just a faint inhale, sharp, controlled. She looked away, then walked toward the window, where the glass still shimmered from the storm. You don't know what you're saying, she murmured. I think I do. No, you don't. Her voice tightened. You don't know who that man was. He froze. She turned then, slow, deliberate, her eyes searching his. You really don't, do you? He shook his head once, confused, uneasy. She exhaled, leaning back against the windowsill. He's not just someone I used to know. He's your professor, isn't he? The words hit like a cold wave. He blinked, the world suddenly narrowing. You know him? A humorless smile flickered across her lips. Knew him long before you ever walked into his class. The silence that followed was unbearable. He could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator again, the ticking clock, the distant car outside, everything ordinary, while the room itself tilted off its axis. Her voice softened. It was years ago. It ended badly. He doesn't forgive easily. He stepped back, instinctively. So when he called your name, she nodded slowly. He must have seen you here. The realization sank in, slow, heavy, and irreversible. That's why you were afraid. Her eyes glistened, though she didn't blink. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of what it meant if you stayed. He wanted to say something. Anything. But the air between them had changed. What was once thrilling now felt dangerous, almost reckless. She stepped closer, voice low. You don't understand what he's capable of. If he thinks, if he even suspects. Let him, he said suddenly, his voice rougher than before. Her eyes widened, startled by the edge in his tone. Let him think whatever he wants, he continued. I'm not going to pretend there's nothing here. Her hand trembled, brushing her hair back. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes them real. He took one step forward. Maybe they already are. Her breath caught, a short, sharp sound. And then the knock came. 3 firm raps against the door. Both froze. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, her lips barely moving as she whispered, "That's him." The knock hung in the air like a warning. Neither of them moved. Her hand, trembling now, pressed flat against her chest as if to slow her heartbeat. He stayed frozen near the doorknob, fingers barely grazing the cool metal. Another knock. Louder. Sharper. "Don't answer it," she whispered. He turned to her, eyes searching. "You're shaking. I told you he doesn't forgive." He stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was almost a breath. "Then don't let him in." She shook her head, pacing once, then stopping. "If I don't, he'll know." "Know what?" Her silence said enough. When the knock. He could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator again, the ticking clock, the distant car outside. Everything ordinary, while the room itself tilted off its axis. Her voice softened. It was years ago. It ended badly. He doesn't forgive easily." He stepped back, instinctively. "So when he called your name?" She nodded slowly. "He must have seen you here." The realization sank in, slow, heavy, and irreversible. "That's why you were afraid." Her eyes glistened, though she didn't blink. "I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of what it meant if you stayed." He wanted to say something. Anything. But the air between them had changed. What was once thrilling now felt dangerous, almost reckless. She stepped closer, voice low. "You don't understand what he's capable of. If he thinks, if he even suspects." "Let him," he said suddenly, his voice rougher than before. Her eyes widened, startled by the edge in his tone. "Let him think whatever he wants," he continued. "I'm not going to pretend there's nothing here." Her hand trembled, brushing her hair back. "You can't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes them real." He took one step forward. "Maybe they already are." Her breath caught, a short, sharp sound. And then the knock came. 3 firm raps against the door. Both froze. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, her lips barely moving as she whispered, "That's him." The knock hung in the air like a warning. Neither of them moved. Her hand, trembling now, pressed flat against her chest as if to slow her heartbeat. He stayed frozen near the doorknob, fingers barely grazing the cool metal. Another knock. Louder. Sharper. "Don't answer it," she whispered. He turned to her, eyes searching. "You're shaking. I told you he doesn't forgive." He stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was almost a breath. "Then don't let him in." She shook her head, pacing once, then stopping. "If I don't, he'll know." "Know what?" Her silence said enough. When the knock came again, she flinched, eyes glancing toward the window. The only other exit. Too narrow, too far. Her voice dropped to a whisper, raw with panic. "You have to go. I'm not leaving you alone with him. You have no idea what this will cost you. Maybe I don't care anymore." She turned then, eyes wide, and for the first time, something inside her broke. That calm, unshakable grace he'd always seen. In its place was fear, but also something deeper, surrender. Her voice cracked. "You think this is about wanting you? It's about losing you." He froze. "I try to push you away," she continued, each word trembling. "Because every time you look at me like that, I remember what it's like to feel alive. And that terrifies me." He took a step closer. "Maybe it doesn't have to." She gave a short, helpless laugh, more of a gasp. "You're too young to think that. Too young to believe wanting someone is enough to survive it." "Then teach me what it costs," he said. Her breath hitched. "Don't say that." But he was already closer, close enough that her hair brushed against his jaw, the faint scent of her perfume rising again like memory. Outside, the sound of retreating footsteps faded down the hall. The knocking had stopped. Only silence now. Her gaze lifted to meet his, unguarded this time, nothing left to hide behind. He whispered, "He's gone." "I know." Neither stepped back. Her hand rose, uncertain, trembling, then rested lightly on his chest. Beneath her palm, his heart thudded fast, uneven. "This can't happen," she murmured. He nodded once. "Then why are we still standing here?" Her fingers curled slightly against his shirt, anchoring herself to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I don't want to let go." The words landed like confession, like surrender. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Then don't. She closed her eyes, a quiet, broken sound leaving her throat, somewhere between relief and defeat. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fight was gone. The fear wasn't. But the pretending, that was over. For a long, suspended second, they stood there, breath to breath, heartbeat to heartbeat, both knowing they'd crossed the line that had been waiting for them all along. And just before the space between them disappeared, she whispered, barely audible, "This will change everything." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Morning found them in silence. The storm had passed hours ago, leaving behind the soft hum of sunlight pushing through the curtains. The world felt smaller now, quieter, as if the night before had folded itself neatly into the corners of the room, refusing to leave, but no longer shouting to be noticed. She sat at the edge of the couch, barefoot, her hands wrapped loosely around a mug of coffee that had gone cold. He was by the window, watching the light climb across the floorboards, trying to find the right words and failing with every one that came to mind. Neither of them looked away from where they sat, close, but not touching. The air between them was gentler now, though no less heavy with what they both knew had changed. Finally, she spoke. "You stayed." He turned, offering a small, almost sheepish smile. "You didn't ask me to go." Her lips curved, tired, soft, real. "I didn't have to." He crossed the room, slow, deliberate, as though any sudden movement might undo the fragile peace they'd found. When he reached her, he crouched down so they were level, her eyes searching his face like she was memorizing it all over again. "You look different in the daylight," she said quietly. "So do you." A faint laugh escaped her, the kind that carried both relief and sorrow. "You shouldn't say things like that. I don't think I can stop anymore." She sighed, setting the mug aside. "You'll learn. We all do." "Maybe," he said. "But I don't want to learn how to unfeel something that's already part of me." That made her look up. Really look. He didn't move closer. This time, he didn't need to. She reached for his hand instead, fingers tentative at first, then steady. The warmth of her skin meeting his like a truth they'd both avoided for too long. No words, just the quiet rhythm of shared breath. Her thumb brushed across his knuckles once, twice, before she whispered, "You know this can't be simple." "I don't want simple," he said. "I just want it to be real." Her eyes softened, that look he'd fallen into from the first day they met. "It already is." And that was enough. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead lightly against hers. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just closeness, raw and grounding. Her hand rose to his cheek, her touch slow, tracing the faint stubble there, as if anchoring herself to the moment. Outside, the city stirred again. Cars, distant laughter, the sound of a new day trying to begin. But inside, it was quiet. No guilt now. No running. Just the warmth of being seen, of knowing what had finally been said without words. She smiled faintly, eyes half closed. "You should go get some sleep." He nodded, still close enough to feel her breath. "Only if you promise to call me later." "I will," she said. And for once, it didn't sound like a promise made to be broken. Did you enjoy the story? Would you like to hear more slow burn romances like this? Or something entirely new next time?